Hello everyone, good afternoon. Hopefully you can all hear and see me okay. Thank you very much for joining this Your Overseas Home webinar. My name is Sebastian Bampton and I'm one of the account managers over here at Your Overseas Home. Today we're very luckily joined by Nicola Chudley, who is the Director of Consumer Sales over at Gosselin Moving. And we're going to be talking all about the process of moving your belongings overseas to your new wonderful countries where you're looking to purchase properties. It's great to have you all here with us, whether you are listening in live or on demand. Before we get started, I don't want to take up too much time myself, Nicola, because I know we've got about 30 minutes, but thank you for being here. If you wouldn't mind just giving us a brief introduction to yourself and a bit of an overview about Gosselin, and then we'll go back into the next part of the webinar.
Of course. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As Seb said, my name is Nicola Chudley. I work for Gosselin Moving. Gosselin is a long-established international moving company. Over 90 years of experience with offices, 56 different offices in 34 countries. So I personally have been in this industry for 25 years. So I'm hoping that I can give you some hints and tips for planning your international removal, whilst also explaining what the main steps are. So Seb, I'll pass it back to you for now.
Thanks, Nicola. So thanks again for being here. I think it's a really exciting thing that our viewers are looking to do, move overseas. I feel like this part of the process is probably something that is overlooked until the latter stages of people's moves. But, hopefully today we'll get a better understanding about what the role of Gosselin is and why it's important to plan for this part of the journey as well. So, yeah, thanks again for being here, Nicola. Before we go into the presentation, a bit of housekeeping. So this is kind of going to be a short presentation from Nicola where she'll explain about Gosselin, about what their role is within the moving process. And there'll also be a question and answer style session at the end. So at the bottom right hand side of your screen, you'll see a questions tab. Please feel free to click on that, type in any questions that you have throughout the presentation. If they are certain questions relative to the slides that are being spoken about, I'll just jump in and ask them towards Nicola. If not, at the end, we can go through those questions with Nicola and hope to get all of your questions answered. So yeah, enough from me. I'll pass back over to you now, Nicola. So if you want to take it away with the presentation.
Perfect. Okay, so just really wanted to talk about the main steps involved when you're moving your goods abroad. So really the first thing to think about is starting to plan your budget. When you're looking to purchase or move a house abroad, there are various obviously costs, as I'm sure you're finding out along the way. So it's important to make sure that albeit the removals comes to the latter part of the process, you want to still get an idea for your budget planning, what those costs are going to look like. So you might not be ready to perform your move yet, but even if it's just getting a ballpark quotation so you can include it in your costs, we can always revisit it and finalize the costs at a later stage once your plans have settled more. So then you're going to need to start contacting moving companies. So they will arrange for you to do a pre-move survey in order that they can provide you with that quotation. At the same time, they should also be able to give you some guidance on the customs formalities that you're going to need to adhere to. Once you're ready to proceed, you can go ahead and book in your preferred dates, have your goods packed up and then deliver to your new home. So I am going to elaborate on some of these points a little bit more just to give you a few tips. So the main thing is really, why use a professional moving company? Well, really, they're going to be able to arrange a door-to-door service for you. It's going to take away a lot of the stress at a time when you've got many other things to arrange. And moving goods on a longer distance journey, it's very different to moving them locally. A specialist is going to understand how to safely pack and transport your goods. They're also the specialists in understanding what the customs requirements are at destination. And these are your personal belongings, so they just deserve a personal approach as well. Now, in order to start contacting moving companies, really, how do you decide who to start approaching? great way to start is to get referrals from trusted sources. So friends, family members, colleagues who have maybe moved internationally in the past. Professional organisations such as your overseas home will be able to give recommendations. But also do look for moving companies that have quality accreditation. So, for example, BAR or FEED. Now, BAR is the British Association of Removalists, and FEED is a global alliance of quality certified international moving companies. So those are always a good starting point in order to select your moving company. Once you've done that, the step one in the process is always going to be doing a pre-move survey. So these can be done virtually using your smartphone or as an in-home survey, for example. But basically, it's the opportunity for us to assess the volume of your goods, but also review the access, whether your home, for example, has parking restrictions on the street outside, whether you have a small lift we need to contend with, narrow staircase, but also point out if there's any items, special items that need to be moved. So artwork, pianos, glass, dining room tables, anything like that, so that the crew can come fully prepared to move those items safely. And when you're doing this, don't forget those places in your home that you might not visit very often, your basements, your loft, sheds and garages. They can hide quite a high volume of goods, but can sometimes not be thought about when we're thinking about what we're moving. But again, it's a great opportunity just to start discussing what your intentions are, formulating the plan, asking your moving company any questions that you might have about the process. And some companies like Gosselin, they'll provide you with a visual detailed inventory after the survey. So it's almost like a photographic inventory of all of your goods that you're moving. Just makes it super clear to both parties exactly how the volume was calculated and what your quotation does include us covering. Okay. So when you start collecting your offers in, they can all look a little bit different and a little bit daunting. So just the main things for you to be sure that you are looking at a like-for-like quotation is the volume. So just checking that the moving companies that you have contacted are working on a similar volume. And then things like, have they included the packing or unpacking services that you had maybe discussed with them or that you were wanting? Have they included the parking suspension that might be needed on your street? So just check these things to make sure that both companies have included the same things, so you're comparing like for like. There's also multiple transport options that are available. So just make sure your moving partner has selected the option that works best for you. So, for example, there's a more economical shared truck service. It might take a bit longer, but you're sharing the costs with other people in that truck. But then there's also a faster dedicated truck that will leave one property and drive directly to your new property. So just make sure that what you need is what has been included in the quotation. And just do talk to your preferred supplier if they are slightly more expensive. There are often options available to reduce the cost when we start, especially considering dates. It might be that we have a truck in that area, so we can pick yours up. So just talk to them if they are a little bit out, and hopefully they'll be able to kind of accommodate and work to your budget. Okay, and then
can I just jump in just back on that slide? I know you mentioned it says insurance here. I mean, is that something that's included just within the price? Is you don't have a choice, you have to get insurance? Is that optional? What does that normally work?
No, the insurance is absolutely optional. Okay, so it's not anything that you must partake in. If you do want to have your goods insured for this international journey, what basically happens is you will need to. Your moving company will provide you with a valued inventory. So, in other words, a list of the items that you're wanting to insure. And then all you would need to do is actually write down what the value of those items are. Now, what we recommend is that you, value-wise, you include the full replacement value at destination. So if the worst did happen and something got damaged or lost, you would have the funds in your local destination to be able to go to a store and repurchase that item. But it's completely optional. Generally speaking, it works on a percentage of the declared value. So it may be, for example, if your value is £10,000 worth of cover, it may well be that it's something along the lines of 2% of that declared value would be the cost of the premium.
Sure. And I guess I could pick certain items that I wanted insured and others that I don't, or is it everything needs to be insured?
So generally speaking, if it's not on the list of items on the itemized inventory, then those items would not be insured. So just be very, you don't have to insure everything. Like obviously, you've got a few books or an alarm clock. You're not going to get that detailed, but making sure that all of your main things are on the list is definitely recommended.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Nicola. Okay. Sorry to jump in.
No.
I just thought
not at all. Not at all. That was okay. And then, so on to customs. So this is really, since Brexit, it is now a requirement to apply for customs clearance for your household goods when moving from the UK. So it's really important to understand what is required of you to ensure that you'll be offered a duty-free entry. The last thing you want to do is have to find that you've got to be paying duty on all of the things you already own. So it's really important to understand what the requirements are. So a bit like what you can see on the screen there, Gosselin can provide you with a customs guide showing exactly what documentation is required for each country. And also what you are allowed to import and what you're not allowed. So definitely please do reach out if you would find a copy of the customs regulations useful. Okay, so then really you've booked, you're going to book your move in. So I would definitely say try to give the moving company at least a month, maybe 6 weeks to book your dates in with your preferred moving company. If you are wanting to move during the summer months, which for moving companies is pretty much sort of July and August, it gets incredibly busy and most moving companies will reach full capacity. So definitely, if you are looking to move in the summer, try and get your dates in even earlier to secure them. Most moving companies will not request any funds or deposit to secure dates, but again, do just discuss the payment terms with them so that you don't have any surprises there. Okay, so now you've got your dates booked in. You've got a little bit of time to organise yourself. Great opportunity to now start clearing out those things that you don't want to bring with you. But also think about those things that you're not allowed to bring with you potentially. So for a lot of countries, alcohol, plants. So maybe it's a good opportunity to have a leaving party. But plants in particular, a lot of people really love their plants and they can be quite upset at the thought of leaving them behind. So, have a think about who might appreciate them as much as you do, friends and family maybe that you can donate to. But Gosselin does also have a moving checklist available. So it has lots of prompts on it. So things that you just might not have even thought about. So again, if you do want a copy of that, if you would find that useful, just let us know and I can send that out to you. But again, things like pets, if you're moving with your animals, make sure that their microchips are up to date. Definitely when you get there, make sure that you're registering them with a local vet and check if that microchip database is accessible in your destination country. A local vet will also be able to give you any advice on any local requirements that your animal must now adhere to. Okay, and then we're going to get on to actual moving day. So what happens on moving day? It can be a bit of a nerve-wracking day. A lot of people, this is now when the reality really sort of starts to kick in that they're going. But generally speaking, the crew are going to turn up. They're going to have lots of materials with them. They are going to lay down protective materials such as floor protection so that nothing gets damaged. But most importantly, this is a really good opportunity for you to have a walk around with the crew foreman. So you may well have spoken to people and talked about some of these items that, you know, maybe you're particularly concerned by, you know, a family sentimental piece, for example. So it's just a really good chance just to walk around with the foreman, show them exactly what is to be packed and what's to remain, anything that you're concerned by. And then generally the guys will just sort of get on with it. So they will just crack on with starting to pack the items up that you need to be packed. I would definitely recommend that kind of create a do not pack pile. You know, have one little pile in a corner of the room that's got your shoes, your coat, your travel essentials, your documents, your passports. Have one little pile that is your do not pack space. And then that way you're not going to have any horrible surprises when you realise that, you know, your passport's now down at Southampton Port in the back of a container. So this will, and at the end of the day, again, have a walk around with the crew foreman. Just make sure that everything that you wanted to be moved has been moved. You know, the cupboard under the stairs, you know, maybe if you'd said to the crew that that wardrobe's not going, just double check that if you wanted any of the contents of that wardrobe, it has been packed. So just, again, when it's just nice and calm, have that final walk around and just make sure that everything is where it should be. So
Nicola,
then really...
got a question that's actually coming from Suzanne. Is so I know you talk about moving day here. Now, people would view moving day as, you know, packing up their stuff and then they go across the new countries, get the keys and go in. And obviously their belongings could be, there could be a lag, you know, they've got to actually drive them across or get them across the new country. If someone is moving, let's say today, but isn't completing on a property in a couple of weeks' time, what happens between that period with their goods? Does it go into storage at Gosselin? Do Gosselin offer storage options?
So if you actually need to have a little bit of a lag, that can actually work in your favour when it comes to the costs. So let's say moving from the UK to Europe, most places, if you were literally going from door to door, it's not going to really be more than, you know, let's say a 2 or 3 day transit with rest times. However, if you are looking to do things as a shared truck, naturally that kind of extends the transit time to maybe 2 to 3 weeks. So what happens is it goes from your home, it goes into the warehouse, and then the truck collects from the various warehouses that's going to, let's say, Madrid. So you can actually find that choosing that option works for you anyway. So it's going to give you a cost saving, but it also gives you that little bit of breathing space where the other property may not be ready. If you need more of a breathing space, that's absolutely not a problem, because we can do what we call storage in transit. So if you are going traveling before get into your new property, or you need to do some work on the new property before we start filling it back up, then in those instances, we can just keep hold of the goods for as long as you need to. And then they will just quote you a monthly storage cost. Again, we normally have options as to whether we keep hold of it in your country of origin or whether we store it in your country of destination. So either is an option depending on what your needs are.
Okay, great. So yeah, it sounds like you've got options for someone that's ready to go today. If not, they want to do a bit of work, you can then obviously put it in storage. So that's great. And Susan, thank you for your question. Nicola, back over to you.
Thanks, Susan. Okay, so now it's time for you to get going to your destination yourself. So when you are ready to take delivery, just start talking to your moving company about your property, when it is going to be available. This is where we can then start coordinating your available dates with the transit dates, storage if required, etc. But bottom line is you can then both agree a date to deliver your goods. Now, if your moving company didn't already have your delivery address originally, maybe, you've only just signed a lease or finished finding somewhere, do provide it to them so that, like we did at origin, we checked the access out. We want to do the same at destination. The last thing we want now at the end of this journey is to find the truck doesn't fit down the narrow lane, or we should have suspended parking. It's a very busy city. So do make sure that the moving company has got all the information. They can check the access to let you know if there's any concerns. And then what they will do once the crew, again, they'll turn up with your goods, and depending on what your needs are, if you have requested an unpacking service, the moving company will carry your goods into the correct room. And then, as a standard in the industry, we do what we call unpack to a flat surface. So what this means is, taking a kitchen, for example, we all like to plan our own kitchens. We want the plates where we want them, and the herbs and the glasses, and you wouldn't really want someone planning how your kitchen should be laid out. So they will, for example, empty those boxes onto the kitchen worktops. This means that the boxes are empty, so it allows them to take away all the debris so that you're not left with all of that to get rid of in a new country, thinking, how do you get rid of 25 moving boxes. So they can take away all the debris, leaving everything out on a flat surface for you, and then you can kind of just put things away in your own leisure to how you would like your new home to be set up. And then really it's over to you to start this new chapter. Enjoy every second. As I said at the start, Gosselin's a very well-established moving company. We're very fortunate. We've got very strong customer satisfaction rates, and Seb will, of course, share my details during this. So if you do have any further questions or you want a quotation, don't hesitate to get in touch with me.
Thanks, Nicola. That was great. Really, really informative. And I've recently moved to a new place myself, and I did all of the moving myself. And I'm sure anyone listening that has moved themselves and done it themselves knows how stressful it can be. I can't imagine doing that to a new country by myself. So I think it highlighted the level of stress-free moving advice and guidance that you guys can offer people moving overseas to new countries. So thank you, Nicola, for going through that. I know we've got some time left to go through questions, and thank you for everyone that have asked questions so far. Please keep them coming. We'll try and get around to answering them all as we go through. One question we have, Nicola, is around the surveys. I know you mentioned there about doing itineraries, kind of deciding about what's belongings we're taking, and kind of having a tick box. Do you mind just kind of describing how those surveys actually happen? Is it face-to-face, online? How does that all work?
Yeah, so it really depends. I would say nowadays the majority of surveys are done what we call online. And a bit like this, we meet together virtually, and then what we do is you just actually Gosselin uses a system called Guest, and basically we send you a link, you join the call, we can have a chat first of all about any questions you have, and then you almost just sort of stand in your room, and as though you're taking a panoramic photograph, you just slowly scan your phone around your room. It's very smart. It's all based on AI, and it picks up that you've got a sofa, you've got an armchair, you've got a dining table, and it makes a visual list of everything. So we just do that, and then that way, survey, I would normally say, let's say a 3-bedroom house, maybe 40 minutes, something like that. But again, depending on how many questions you have, there's no rush from our side. So if you want to use that as an opportunity, but yeah, with you then will get a visual inventory at the end. So it's definitely worth just double checking that. Just make sure nothing's been included that is meant to be staying behind and so on. So do have a look through your visual inventory and just make sure it is exactly what you wanted to be included.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, check all those places where you probably wouldn't think about at the time, like garages and all that. In there.
Exactly. I've sometimes gone in. I've sometimes seen a garage, and it's probably had more in it than the rest of the flat that I saw. So it can really make a big difference to the volume.
Yeah, I can imagine. A good opportunity, I suppose, to do a bit of clearing out of all the stuff you don't want as well. So, good point, Nicola. We got a couple of questions, Nicola, as well. So Tracy's asked, do you accept small jobs as well as larger ones? Is there a minimum size move?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. Absolutely. There's no minimum or maximum. Some people are moving with all of their furniture. Other people are just taking their personal effects. Where I would say moving companies probably you may, for example, like if you literally have, say, 2 boxes, you may find that paying for excess baggage is cheaper than a moving company, but really there is no minimum. I have moved single pieces of art, I have moved very, very small shipments, and I've moved incredibly, large properties as well. So no real minimum and maximum from our point of view. It just really what makes sense more from your perspective and a budget side.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant. I think, just, if you're moving overseas, I know everyone's requirements are different, and having that conversation or having a survey done about what you're actually moving, then you can establish whether or not it's cost effective. And I know you have various options, as you mentioned earlier, Nicola, with groupage and getting stuff together in lorries that go in the same direction, which are more cost effective. So I think a consultation call just to get that information be really useful. And we've had a couple of questions around really family members, I suppose, moving overseas that perhaps you can't take with you next to you on a plane. So moving pets, is that a part of the process that Gosselin can help with, or do you work with someone that can help that?
So moving pets, it's a very specialized area. You really want to be working with a moving company that knows exactly what the requirements are, because you want your friend to get there really smoothly. Their journey must be smooth. So what Gosselin work with a pet transportation company, and so they are doing it for us. It's not something, we are not physically moving pets ourselves, but yes, absolutely, we can certainly put you in touch with a pet transportation company to take care of that side of it, which is, let's be honest, the most important part of the move.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's a very, very specialist as well, I suppose. It's not like you're moving a wardrobe or something like that. So,
absolutely.
I know that question comes up quite a lot. There's been, I think, Kathy asked the same one. I think Roger as well. So, it's a common question. So, it's great to hear that, you could help introduce them to someone that can obviously specialise in that part of the move.
Because also sometimes you just need the advice. There are actually ways now that you can almost do it yourself as well. There are some airlines that will allow you to take pets with you, but it's just that you might need to understand the documentation side and what you need to do. So actually, it doesn't mean that you have to sort of give the whole moving process of your pet to a pet transportation company, it could just be that you just maybe need them to help you with the documentation side or give you advice about what airlines to try and book your flights with that would allow a pet. So just getting the advice on it can actually be really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the questions and thanks for the answer, Nicola. We've got a question here, and Robert, I know you asked this quite some time ago, so apologies, we're just getting around to answering now. Robert asks, is it moving cars or vehicles? Can Gosselin help with those vehicle removals?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways to move vehicles. So if you, for example, are also moving your household goods, then in that sort of scenario, what we can actually do is put your household goods and your vehicle in a truck together. If you are just moving your vehicle, then again, we would work with a vehicle transportation company. There are obviously customs implications to moving your vehicle. So, additional to the household goods, I'm afraid, you would need to provide some information about the vehicle, the registrations. It can differ from country to country, so I'm not going to get too specific, but the registration, the value of it, so on and so forth, how long you've owned it for. So most countries will want a clear indication that this is your existing motor vehicle that you're bringing with you, as opposed to you importing one that you might be looking to sort of sell, for example.
Sure. Okay, great. No, that's very clear. I think just from the questions that we've had, it's really clear that there's so many different circumstances, different requirements for people that are looking to move overseas, and with that, it makes it hard to I suppose understand the costs that are involved in this part of the process until they've had a bit of that, at least a conversation with someone that can give them an accurate quote. I know earlier on in the presentation, Nicola, you mentioned talking around busy times of the year.
Yes.
Naturally, people probably leave this part of the process towards the latter stages of their buying process. When would you advise someone to have a conversation with you or a member of the team at Gosselin just to kind of understand what things potentially could cost and then to get that conversation? When would be best?
So I think there's almost like 2 times where it's recommended you're talking to your removal company. So one, I would say when you've decided you are moving abroad and you are putting together all of your budget for the, estate agents, immigration lawyers, all of this, at that point, it is definitely worth just reaching out and just getting an idea. Even if it's I've got a 3-bedroom house and I'm moving to northern France. If it's very generic, you can just get a little bit of an idea so that you know whether you're putting 500 in your budget or 5,000 in your budget. So that's definitely recommended at that stage. But in terms of then really starting to get a accurate quotation that's based on your needs, I would suggest maybe 3 months before, because it gives you plenty of time to stop and think, am I bringing everything? Do I really need to bring everything? You've got plenty of time to make changes. You've also got plenty of time to book in your dates. And then because your moving company, for example, if you do live in London where maybe there's parking restrictions, we can have to sometimes apply a couple of weeks beforehand with the local council. So you don't want to leave everything kind of too last minute, because there are just some logistical things that can take a little bit of time to arrange. But like most things in life, the earlier the better, really. It can just be another thing that's off your list. Don't get me wrong. We can, perform magic if we really need to. So if your plans change and it needs to be go, 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 we can do it. It just, it can be just a little bit of a calmer process if we have some more time to work with you.
Yeah. And moving is, I know, stressful enough as it is. And there's a lot to think about when buying property, let alone buying property overseas. So, if it was me, I would have that conversation as early as I can and then plan and when you find property, things can move quite quickly. So yeah, that's great, Nick. Thank you very much. We have one last question, I believe, which we haven't answered yet, which was from Robin, just in regards to costings. I know costings vary depending on so many different variables, but is the shipping costs, are they based on weight, volume? How does that work? Is it number of items?
Yeah, very good question. So it's generally, I'm going to give you sort of two answers here. For a road move, it's going to basically be the volume that your goods take up. So in the truck, your goods take up X amount of volume. If they take up 80% of the truck, then you're likely to be charged for 80% of the truck, and someone else the remaining 20%. A lot of moving companies, they will talk about weight when they are more so looking at a deep sea move. So UK to USA, UK to Singapore, or air freights. That's where weight becomes more of a consideration. Road moves, the consideration is heavier on the volume side, but it's not necessarily like per item. Moving companies don't charge per hour, for example. It really is about the volume of the goods that you're moving.
Sure. Brilliant. Okay, no, thank you. I would say if you've got some of those bulky stuff that doesn't weigh much that you don't want, get rid of it before you move.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
So I know we've gone slightly over time, Nicola, but yeah, thank you very much for obviously answering the questions, and thank you to everyone listening in and asking the questions. As I said, this is a part of the process that you probably will have to do if you're moving overseas and you want to take all your belongings with you, and hopefully you've got those questions answered. We, of course, do strongly recommend that you speak to Nicola and the team at Gosselin as early as you can, just to understand how to budget, but also understand and potentially book in those moves in preparation for the busier times of the year. If you have found it useful, there should be a Trustpilot link that pops up on the screen fairly soon. We really appreciate it if you'd leave Nicola and I a lovely review. And if there's any other questions that you do have, we'll pass your details across to Nicola, who will follow up with you and her team at Gosselin, and I'll probably go through them in a bit more detail. We also have our virtual event, which is happening on March the 22nd, when Nicola and the team at Gosselin will also be there. You'll be able to speak to all the services that you need when buying properties or moving overseas as well. And there should be another link just dropping at the front of your screen. Nicola, thank you again to you. You've been great. It's been really, really informative, and I really appreciate your time. And yeah, thank you to everyone listening in, and happy property hunting.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Nicola. All the best.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.